Hello, everyone. This is Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love, and thank you for being in Soul Talk. And today we have Stuart Elliot that right now we're connecting. He's in China, right?
That's correct. In a beautiful place, a part of China called Guilin. And this picture in the background is a sunset I took a couple of weeks ago. It's the local type of scenery. It's a very famous tourist or area in Guilin, in the whole of China. It's mountainous, rivers, lakes. It's very, very picturesque. So I'm lucky in that respect.
So this is going to take us precisely that photo is going to take us to dive in into this interview. And
Mhm.
if you're ready to live the life of your dreams and have that sunset.
Mhm.
And like Stuart is doing that, he's going to tell us a little bit about who he is and how he got there. Please, Stuart, thank you so much for. I really appreciate you becoming coming part of the family of Soul Talk. Thank you so.
Well, it's my pleasure. And, I have to thank you, obviously, for connecting with me and allowing me to be here. And my journey starts in the UK, as you can imagine, so not imagine, as you can hear. My voice is not really a Chinese accent. And back in 1986, I decided that I need to travel to Africa and do an overland trip through Africa. So I organized what was going to happen, and I went out to South Africa, spent a month in South Africa, and then we met up with the other people on the trip, and then took 6 months to travel back from South Africa overland back to the UK. And there were so many adventures and life lessons which happened, but I didn't necessarily pick up on at the time. That's the interesting thing about life. And then when we got back to the UK, I got off the ferry and I looked around and said, I don't like it. I'm going back. So I went back to Africa 3 months later and I stayed there for about 18 years, 19 years or so. And then, as life happens, changes were introduced and the life I had started to fall apart and I was given an opportunity to come to China. And my first question was, where, north or south? If it's the north of China, it's like going into the wastelands of Canada. It's very, very cold. And I said, I'm not interested in the cold. So they told me, no, it's going to be not very far from Vietnam in a place called Nanning, which is the capital of that region. So I said, okay. And I came over here to teach English for 1 year, English as a second language. And I'm still here after nearly 20 years. And in that time period, I've met my wife, and teaching English actually taught me so much about connecting, communicating with people, just about being real for the students. And I couldn't understand why I was the most popular student. I had the highest results. And the students just loved me, but they were also learning so much. And I thought, I'm just having fun. And that's one of the big secrets. That's one of the big secrets. But around 2012, I decided, okay, I need to find out more about mindset and everything else. So there was a course in London an NLP course in London that had John Grinder as one of the trainers. So I thought, okay, I've got to go. So I went to London for 3 weeks, spent that time there learning about the new code and classic NLP with John Grinder as one of the instructors. And then a little bit later that year, there was an Ericksonian conversational hypnotherapy training in Amsterdam. So I thought, I've got to do this. So I went there and did that. And somewhere along that journey, I just suddenly said, aha, now I know what I'm doing. And that was it. I was able to use those tools and communicate even more directly because I was doing it now with an intent, with a proper purpose, rather than doing it randomly, if you like. And it was wonderful to see the changes that were happening with the students. And I had a kindergarten class, 4 or 5 year olds, and I went in there first time in the class, and I told the teachers that I was going to teach them anagrams of colors. And they looked at me as though I was crazy. You can't do that. I said, just watch. And I just made a big game. And we had about 6 or 7 children. It was a small class, private class. And I split them into 2 teams. And I called the one team monkeys. No, 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 they don't like monkeys. So I said, well, what do you want? And they came up with a name. Maybe it was kitty cats or something like that. And so I wrote kitty cat on the board. And then I said to the other group, you're pigs. And then it's the same thing. No, 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 all sorts of noise and things. And they gave me a name that they wanted to be called as a team. And I wrote that on the board. And then I just got flashcards of colors out and the common colors, red, green, blue, etc. Said, what color is this? And the first team that actually answered, I just put a stroke on the board. And then I made sure that as we kept asking questions, that the strokes were equal. It was just line, 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 line. And they were all equal, or, virtually equal. And then every now and again, I'd just stop and start counting. And they'd start counting with me. And we got up to something like 60 strokes in total throughout the whole lesson. But what happened was, as they started getting more strokes and I started counting, I was making mistakes. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 9. And they would start correcting me because they don't want to lose. So we had fun there, and I got them learning passively to count up to 60 or so without even realizing it. And as the lesson progressed, I put the name of the color next to the color and showed the flashcard and put it next to it, and then wrote red if it was a red flashcard, and then moved the flashcards away and then pointed to the board so that they were starting to pick out the colors from the board. And then it was a natural progression just to swap the letters around a little bit and say, what color is this? And they knew because they were engaged in the game. They weren't learning English. They weren't learning color. They wanted to win that game. That was their core thing.
This reminds me a little bit about I teach in a Montessori school,
Mm-hmm.
art and Spanish. And that was part of the system because many people do not learn in the same way. That's
Mm-hmm.
a big problems that we have in the school district and everywhere, at least in
Yeah.
United States. Why? Because some people are more auditive, some people are more tactile, some people are those things that they teach us also in NLP.
Mm-hmm.
But so when the kids you put it in hands on and making a game with that, they learn faster and they learn easier than
Mm-hmm.
at the traditional school.
Yeah.
And you make it fun for them. That was awesome.
Well, you're engaging them, aren't you? That's the whole thing. And children learn naturally through fun, through games. And unfortunately, a lot of the schooling is very rigid. It has to be done this way rather than just playing. And, as I progressed with the teaching, I was keeping notes because I just wanted to know what was working and what wasn't working. And I noticed that every month regularly, there was a challenge. They weren't focused, they weren't listening, they weren't taking notice. So I looked through the notes one day and I saw it's regularly a month, a month, a month, a month. And I found out it was the full moon. So I'd make a very, very rough lesson plan and I'd just go in there with the intent to get to the end. And how I got there, that was up to the children. And it worked. I got their attention. We just had silly things, but I was directing them in that way. I wasn't trying to force them out of their natural rhythm. And that again is one of the challenges that a lot of people have who teach anything, is that they know it this way and that's the way it must be. And if you just engage people, you can direct them anywhere you need to, and they will pick up on the lessons that are necessary if you allow them to communicate with you and you can communicate with them. And they taught me so much. I mean, it's crazy.
And I know you not only work with kids, you also
Oh yeah,
with
everybody. Yeah, everybody, because we're all affected. I mean, if you think of the moon, we're what, 70, 80, 90% water. And if the moon can move the oceans and the big lakes of the world, it's got to do something to us, hasn't it?
that's true.
And I mean, the the word Luna, if you talk to the police and the fire services around the world, it's derived from lunacy. Sorry, lunacy is derived from Luna, and they know that when it's a full moon coming up, there's going to be a lot of trouble.
Yes.
So they prepare for it. So it's just something we're not taught.
I have asked that question to many cops and many people in the service. It's like if there is more violence or more aggressivity or people are out of control in a way
Yeah,
with full moon, and they have agreed with that statement that you just did.
yeah.
It is true. But something that to bring you back for what did you do, that it is, I would like to talk about the possibilities because we're gonna, like I mentioned at the beginning about the beautiful
Mm-hmm.
in the back, that is your view, that you took that photo, that you're living in a way the life that you want to live.
Mm-hmm.
And you work with people to so they can remove their limitations and they can live the life that they want. How do you work with people with in that way? How they can make possible those
Well,
dreams?
it's just having a conversation as much as anything else, but it's a directed conversation. And one of the things that I think the vast majority of people don't realize is how much capability they have inside themselves. I mean, most people have heard stories of a mother whose child's trapped under a car and she finds somehow the strength to lift it up and pick it up, but they never think that could be them. And I've had a couple of experiences where if I didn't do what I did, I wouldn't be here to tell the tale. And, even coming over here to China, I just said yes. I didn't know anything about it or anything else. I just said yes. And I was given a plane ticket and told I would be met at the airport and given another plane ticket to go to my final destination. There will be people waiting for me. Now, many people would have been petrified. They would have been worried. What happens if it goes wrong? What happens if there's nobody there? What happens if that? They're focusing on that negative side. And that's how they've been, shall we say, conditioned by families, societies, etc., etc. But what if it didn't go wrong? And that's a powerful question to ask anybody in a coaching situation because it helps them to think in a different way. I mean, I had a client and she was in that state, what if this? And it was all negative. I said, well, what if it didn't? And I just kept it quiet. And it really stopped her in her tracks because she's never even considered that before. So as you know, with NLP or hypnosis or anything else, you direct the questions in the right way and it hits their unconscious barriers and gets past them and allows them to think in a much more positive way. And once they start making those little changes, you can see it in their face, their expressions, their coloring, their breathing, or whatever. And then you know you're on the right path and you're able to keep going. And all of a sudden, the light bulb goes off inside.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Mi nombre es Mónica Ramírez, la guerrera del amor. Los quiero invitar a un diplomado que es de transformación en metamorfosis, como mi libro que acaba de salir. Pero en este diplomado que vamos a hacer es por 12 semanas, va a ser conmigo en línea. No tienes que hacer esto solo, porque yo anteriormente me sentía que yo no valía, que yo no era suficiente. Y entonces, ¿cómo me iba a traer realmente la vida que yo quería? Tuve que hacer precisamente este tipo de transformaciones y el trabajo interno para poder salir de donde me encontraba, dejando ir todos los traumas ancestrales que yo venía cargando, como todos ustedes, entender que era un programa para empezar. Y como programadora en lingüística aprendí precisamente a remover esos programas y a poner los programas que yo quiero tener en mi vida para que mi experiencia sea muy diferente a la que fue. Si quieres aprender a dejar ir las culpas, las vergüenzas, los miedos, el miedo, el juicio a los demás o el miedo de ser exitoso, porque muchas veces nos saboteamos a nosotros mismos. Soy programadora en la lingüística, soy hipnoterapista, soy life coach También soy especialista en creencias limitantes y mucho más. Y estoy aquí realmente para servirte. Esta es mi misión de vida y mi propósito de vida. Y lo quiero compartir contigo. Empezamos el 27 de febrero a las 7 de la noche. ¿Quieras unir a nosotros en este grupo que vamos a hacer? Que empezamos muy pronto. Mi nombre es Mónica Ramírez, la guerrera del amor, y únete a este programa de transformación en metamorfosis. Este diplomado realmente va a cambiar tu vida. I would like to ask you about this. Something that I have encountered a lot with my clients,
Mm-hmm.
and that you do, is the majority of the human beings do not know what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's the first step for most of the practice, but at least I know for NLP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, if you, I can't remember when it was written, but there was a lady called Bronnie, Bronnie, Ware. And she was an Australian caregiver who worked with terminally ill patients who'd been sent home. You know, there's nothing more the hospital could do. And she wrote a paper, The Five Regrets of the Dying. And these were the most common things that people were saying on their deathbed as they were getting ready to pass on. One of them was not choosing to be happy, which is actually quite an interesting one. Another one was not choosing to live my own life. And that goes back into that statement you just made about people not knowing what they wanted to do. I mean, when I left school, I was at 15 or 16, I wasn't sure of anything about what I wanted. I knew two things, that I wanted to work with something to do with electricity. And number two is I wanted to get a motorbike. The only two things I knew. And I did. And it was a great education. I mean, I started work for the post office in the UK, and it used to be Post Office Telecoms, now it's British Telecom. And my first job was to go around people's houses putting phones in. And then I moved on and went through an apprenticeship and everything else. And I ended up going to people's houses to fix the phones for about 4 years. Now, I didn't know what that was teaching me about people, about communication, about connecting with people. Because when you go into someone's house to fix a phone, you see things that quite often you shouldn't be seeing because they don't see you as a real person. You're just a worker, a tradesman, or something like that. Some people treat you, I mean, they treat you well, but they just don't see you, so they don't care. Whereas if your best friend's coming over, many people will think, okay, I have to tidy the house up, I have to do this and I have to do that. But when you go in as that tradesperson, you see things. And I was learning so much about people, but I didn't realize it. That was one of the lessons. That was one of my major MBAs, if you like. But it took me a long time to connect to all those lessons and be able to put them into practice. And it took me much longer. It took me my trip through Africa, connecting with different peoples in different areas, different languages, different customs, moving to Africa, moving to China, and learning all these things. And then it was the teaching and working with the students who taught me about how to connect with people. But it started a long time ago. It even started before I went to Africa and started working because I was very shy as a teenager. So I'd go to parties and that, and I wouldn't say anything. I'd just sit there. And I'd be looking and hoping and praying that someone would come talk to me because I didn't know how to start a conversation. And then people didn't. They just walked right past me and then, oh, no. But what I didn't realize was that was actually a blessing in disguise because it was giving me an education that I didn't even know existed at the time. I was learning body language, I was learning mannerisms, I was learning to read people's energy, etc., etc. But that lesson took me a while to filter through all the nonsense that I had in my head. And we've all got those things. We just need to find that way to connect through the noise that we've got. And unfortunately, as you say, we don't know what we're supposed to be doing in life. We don't know what we like. We just do what we're following, with what we're dictated to by society or parents. And sometimes, you know, the parents, they want the best for us, but they're our biggest enemy because they're trying to push us down a road which worked for them, but it doesn't work for us.
Or many times it's their dreams, not
Yeah,
necessarily
yeah.
their,
You're going to be a doctor because I couldn't be a doctor.
that happened to me. I wanted to be a dancer.
Mm-hmm.
When I had a daughter, it's like, okay, let me take her to ballet. Let me take her over there. And she told me, I don't want that. I don't want to learn nothing about that. And it was
Mm-hmm.
shocking for me, but it was like, okay, I get it. She's a different being than me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part of the parents sometimes they don't get.
Yeah.
They're our kids, but they're not living, they don't have to live our lives. And that's when the
Yeah,
conflict.
they don't see us as independent people quite often, do they, parents? They're just an extension of themselves.
Yeah.
And that's a shame. But you can see how it happens. And it takes a brave parent, I would suggest, to allow their child to be themselves, to even try and discover that.
Yeah. How do you refocus someone to know what do they want? Because that's the first step to acquiring what do they really want. If they know what do they want.
Yeah, that's a very challenging question because they've been conditioned. So they come in with a very limited, shall we say, mindset.
Yeah.
And I think one of the first things, obviously, is we have to build that rapport with them, but is to just start talking about what different avenues are open for anybody. Once you can get down that pathway and get things written down, get them to write the things down, all of a sudden something will catch their eye. And then you can start talking about it more. And, it could be, as you say, that you want to be a dancer, but I can't be a dancer. Why not? Well, uh, uh, and, they've been limited, but they've never really explored it because that thought has been killed at a very, very early age. And, there was a lady I was on a conversation with. She was mid-age and she was going through she would say a crisis in her life. She had no passion for what she was doing, and everything was falling apart. She was a public speaker in the training side for her company, and she used to love it and was very popular. And then all of a sudden the wheels fell off. The menopause hit, and she was getting worried about her weight. She was getting worried about all the things that happened there. And because of her focus on her career and her husband's focus on her career, they'd separated. And then eventually everything happened and she broke her foot in half. And that was her words. I broke my foot in half. And I was just having a conversation with her. And I said, okay, well, let's go back. I mean, you haven't always been that way. You loved your life. Tell me an incident that was so happy, that just made you so carefree. And she came up with something, and I could feel that it was the wrong thing. It wasn't the thing that we were looking for. It was a work incident, and it was a very successful one. And then she was halfway through explaining it to me, and then she said, "No, that's not the one." So let's just keep going back further. And then she came up with a forbidden pillow fight. And that was when she was around 7 or 8 years old with her brother. They were supposed to be going to sleep and they were having a pillow fight. So as children do, they're making a big noise and the parents are getting agitated and shouting at them. And they were having a whale of a time. And you could see she just exploded into joy. And that was it. I reconnected to her to that, and then amplified it and it kept the memory. And then she just changed in that second. Now she saw all the possibilities. Now she wasn't limited anymore. And one of the things I did as we were getting to the end of the call, I said, whatever happens, you can take that pillow around with you. You can take the metaphorical pillow around with you. You can whack anything away that comes into your a purvey that is a problem. You could just go whack and it's gone. And she loved it. So she had that tool now in her mind that she could do. And I said, and you broke your foot. You can still dance around on stage, but you don't have to be like a Nureyev or one of those top ballerinas or ballet dancers. You can still dance around in your own way, even though your foot's not as strong as it used to be. You can still be whatever you want to be. And all of a sudden, she was looking at possibilities because she'd been re-engaged in that world. And we've all got those memories somewhere. If we can connect them, once we start thinking in that way, then we can start looking much more deeply about, okay, what is it I really want to do? What is it that excites me?
Okay. That is so, so true. If we have a memory that we because we have different moments in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
We were very sad, or we were very happy, or we were
Mm-hmm.
enjoying life. And if we go back to those memories in that time, in that past, we can bring it back to the present.
Yeah.
So that's something that people do not understand. That is important, these kind of talks, so that people can understand that they can shift their lives. They can transform whatever they want. Now, if we go to the limitations that everybody have, even
Mm-hmm.
admit it or not, but you've been working in NLP for a while. That actually, I love the name that you your title, that it is the Soul Whisper.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you refocus a person when you're working with them, because you're coaching one-on-one right now, so like that they can start living the life they want without the limitations? I know it goes way deeper, and it can be a, I don't know how many hours or many days conversation, but let's just give some tips, practical tips for someone that is listening, that they can use it for themselves.
Yeah. Well, you
According.
mentioned listening. And I've asked many people this question. They've looked at me as so I'm stupid. I've asked people quite often in our, calls, conversations, what are you using to listen with? And most people, they look at me as though it's strange. My ears, what's wrong with you? So I said, well, how about listening with your whole body? Because it is that energy that we're emanating from our body, from our heart, from wherever, that is telling the real story. And this goes back to me being shy. I could see this person ta 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 being, the life and soul of the party, but I knew that deep down they were scared, and that's why they were acting that way, because their energy was coming out. They were talking and appearing very, very popular, but they were talking from a place of insecurity, and that was what the energy they were sending out to me. So when I was when I was younger and I was learning, that was one of the big lessons I was picking up, to listen with my body, not just with my ears, to use my eyes, to use all the other energy centers. So that is part of the conversation. And I had a conversation with another client. It was a phone conversation. And we were talking, and all of a sudden, there was a big shift in the energy. And obviously, by phone, you can't see that. And I said to her, I said, you just leant back and stretched your legs out, haven't you? And there was just deathly silence on the phone for a few moments. It was like she was looking around the room for hidden cameras or something like that. And she said, how did you know that? I said, your energy shifted. I could feel that movement with you. So that's where we start having that deeper connection. And you can point things out to people. If you're on a face-to-face call, you can see a change. They move their head in a different way, or their body shifts in a different way, and you point out what's happening now. You've just done this. Something has happened inside you. And through that, we can start getting past, and they start noticing those things that have been happening, and they can pick up on those signals themselves.
Yes. It's one of the reasons why energy work, coaching, therapies, etc., work online.
Mm-hmm.
Because a practice skilled person will know about these details, even if we are not even in camera. It's only.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, how many people do you know who are new to coaching? You say, okay, we need to do these calls on phone. And this is a person maybe you're talking to about coaching, and they're scared because they can't see the person. That's one of their limitations. They need to physically see with their eyes this person. They're not seeing the person energetically. because there is a big difference when you can connect with somebody at that level. Yes, it's great to be able to have visual clues, but there's so many other clues as well. And it is connecting at an energetic level, which is important, isn't it? And this is why it's important to pre-select your clients of people who you can build that rapport with, rather than take on every single person, because one person is right for you, they're not right for me, and vice versa. And it's also very important from a coaching point of view to have a wide network of coaches, because you know who that person needs to talk to, who's on that same wavelength as that person. And then you can refer them so that the person then gets the best help. It's not about me helping everybody. It's impossible, because not everybody can connect with me, my way of thinking.
No, I do agree. Because at the end, we all have our own filters. We're human. We're
Yeah.
we have our own filters. So we're not gonna be coach for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's important to you don't if for any of our viewers, if having a coach that they don't feel that can connect with them,
Mm-hmm.
thousands of coaches don't give up in searching for that help that you require.
Yeah. And just as you're talking, there's a complete calmness about you, and there's a centered energy about you. And your clients will pick up on that. They will feel that. They will just know, I have to talk to Monica
Mhm.
because she really hears me. And that's the big clue, isn't it? Being able to recognize that person who's connecting to your energy, the energy you're projecting from your heart, from everywhere. Once you've got that, then the words don't really matter so much. They are important, but it's that energy connection that's important as well, isn't it?
This for many of our viewers already know what is limitations, but there are some people in there that when you tell them limitations, they still do not get what it is a limitation. So let's talk about what it is a limitation, if you don't mind, because I know.
Yeah, this is where we get into the interesting concept of words. And what I say, or what language I use, even if it's still English, what words I use may not resonate with you as an individual because you have a different filter, a different understanding. So you're translating those words through your own filters. And there's two stories here that I'd like to share that illustrate that. The first is, and I don't have the picture to hand, but I did put a post out about it. When I was working in Africa, we had a client and she had a big, big house with tennis courts, swimming pool, the whole works. And I was maintaining the garden. And it was a Friday afternoon, and I like to finish early on Friday so that the staff could go off and have a bit more time for themselves. And we had a new guy who dead out of the countryside. He's never been in the city. And I wasn't trusting him with the lawnmower or any of the other stuff or the flowers and that. I said, okay, please sweep the tennis court. It's okay, no problem. He goes off and he gets the brush and he sweeps the tennis court. The thing is, he swept around the tennis court on the outside area, which was brown. The playing surface was green. And I noticed there's still debris and leaves on the tennis court, and it was getting on. So I asked him again. After the third time of asking, I got the one of the head staff to come on and said, look, there's something wrong. He's not sweeping the tennis court. I've asked him many times and he says he's done it, but he's not. So he goes over and they had a talk in their local language, which is Zulu. And all of a sudden there's a big eruption of laughter and everything else. They were mocking him because he thought that the green area of the tennis court was pondweed. And he's not walking on it. And he had that filter in place because that was all he'd known. And that was his internal limitation because he's never been introduced to anything else. And I didn't see that. I didn't understand that at the time. And afterwards, I looked at it and I thought, yeah, that could be true. And then I was lucky enough to find a pond covered with weed, and it looked just like a tennis court. And I took a picture and put them side by side. And I said, which would you walk on? And one person told me, oh, this one on the right-hand side, it looks soft. It's like grass. I think I'd prefer to walk on that. I said, well, that's the pondweed. You're seeing it through your filters. So it's a really good example of limitation, our filters, how we see things. And as a coach or anybody else who wants to have a proper conversation, we have to understand that that type of thing is going to limit our conversation unless we're aware of it. We have to start thinking, okay, what is their background? What is their understanding? What is their experience? And if we're using words or we're not getting answers we're expecting, go in deeper and ask questions about that. And that brings me to another story, which is it's just mind blowing in its simplicity, but it's so easy for me, if I wasn't listening, to get the total wrong idea. I was on a training call about hypnosis training call, and we were talking about benign attention. And it was a breakout room. I was with one lady, and there was something wrong. She just couldn't connect to benign attention. She was closing up. She was shrinking. Her energy was disappearing. And I thought, what's going on here? So I just changed the topic, and we had made a general conversation about work and other things. And it turns out that she worked in a terminal cancer facility. And she was in pain and suffering every day. And she'd made this connection with the word benign to cancer. Is this tumor benign? Is it cancerous? And it was triggering all that negative energy that she was experiencing every day with her patients. So I quickly got out the thesaurus on the computer and gave her a few synonyms. And all of a sudden, one of them just worked. Bang, that was it. She was so happy. Now she knew what we were talking about. But she couldn't connect to the word benign. And for me, benign it's got no feeling, no emotion, no connection to anything. It doesn't really matter. But for her, it was a major, major trigger.
Yes.
So we've got to be aware of how people pick up on the words we're using. And if their energy changes in the way that it's not what we're expecting, we need to question it from our point of view and see what words we can substitute, what language we can use, how we can address the thing in a different way so they can connect to the message we're trying to give.
That is so true. It's a miscommunication.
Yeah.
Understanding that the triggers of other people, their own traumas, everybody have that.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be triggers for everybody.
Yeah. But unfortunately, we often are, I'm right, you must understand me.
Yes. Yes.
And that goes back to, when I was teaching, I had an 8-year-old boy teach me that lesson. I was teaching him something, and every time I, repeated myself, he's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And eventually I got so frustrated with myself and that I told myself, he's stupid. I didn't say anything to him, but I said, he's stupid. He'll never get it. Just ignore him. And then I carried on with the class, and the class finished. And then afterwards, as I said, I was writing down, what happened, what was successful, what wasn't. And I just suddenly said, hey, you know what? He's not stupid. You're acting stupid. He's told you many, many times that he doesn't understand how you're presenting this whatever it was I was presenting. But you're not listening to him. You're just trying to force it down harder and harder and harder. But he keeps telling you he doesn't, connect with it. So the next class I had, I went back and I approached the same topic from a totally, totally different position, perspective. And all of a sudden, ding, the light bulb went off. He got it. He was the happiest kid in the world. And you know what? That was such a beautiful lesson from that young boy. Because it wasn't about me, it was about him. That was the key.
We're so rigid that things has to be in a certain way.
Yeah, I'm the teacher, I know.
And the hierarchies. And that's the problem worldwide, is the hierarchies. And And then it is a cultural thing sometimes. I see it
Hmm.
in certain cultures and in other ones about the hierarchy, the
Yeah.
boss, the employee, and why I'm going to listen to the employee when the employee might have great ideas that you're not listening to,
Yeah. Yeah.
or many times, or even we would not have wars if we understand that we don't understand each other.
Mhm.
We just have to find different words to make ourselves understand.
Yeah, I mean, it's so silly, isn't it, if you think of it? But it's so easy to do because we're living in our world,
Yeah.
and if we're the boss, especially in a company, and this is why there's such major problems with communication in countries, that's the way it has to be. But if you allow someone to do things which in the way which is natural to them, and allow them to explore and direct them and help them and guide them rather than trying to force them. It's amazing what people can do, how creative they can be in the way they get things done. Because there's never any one way to do it. But, we've got to guide people, haven't we?
Yes. And it will be a great challenge for everybody, the people that are listening, to find those words. What are the words that you're communicating to your loved ones, to your boss, to your partner, whoever, that it is triggering, so you can put attention. So like that, you can just change the word. It has a different meaning. I've been training myself into that because my first language is Spanish.
Well, you have that advantage. That's
So
a big advantage.
to communicate, sometimes I forgot the word in English. So I have
Hmm.
to go around the word so I can express myself.
Yeah.
And that give me that advantage, like you said.
Yeah, because, you know, if you are only one single, not bilingual, you only have one language. You think that language is the only language in the world, and that's what you use, and then you expect other people
Mhm.
to understand the way you are using that language. But because you, as you said, maybe that the word escapes you for that moment, you find a different way to communicate. And that opens up all possibilities for the other individual because now they're not limited by the language, they're looking at possibility. So that is a major, major advantage.
Yes. Just if they tell me I do not understand, if they don't say it, I continue.
Yeah. Yeah.
People needs to express, I do not understand this word. What do you mean with this? Or
Hmm.
or can you explain me in a different way? And
Yeah.
those are valid. We can say those things. It doesn't matter your boss, your partner, your kids, whatever it is.
Hmm.
Give yourself permission to say, can you repeat it? Or I do not understand that word, or what do you mean?
And they open up inside because they start exploring inside because of that, don't they? Because they have to think in different ways instead of through their limitation.
Yes. This is so, so helpful for everybody that is listening.
Mm.
If more people were open for that, we will have a peaceful world. I think so.
I definitely believe that because it is the misunderstandings. I mean, we judge.
Yes.
We don't know why, but we're so quick to judge. And then we have to justify that belief, that decision, that stance we've taken. And that causes problems.
Yes.
And one of the best things is to get yourself into a country where you can't speak the language and you have to communicate with people through body language, through energy. And what you learn and what they learn in the process.
Yep.
I'm part of a humanitarian foundation, which was started in Africa, and we have a free program that we offer to people. But one of the ladies who went on it, she's South African. She said one of the biggest things she learned is that we're all the same. We're all human beings, and she explained more, but it was so poignant, so powerful. We are all human beings. We've got the same hopes, we've got the same desires, we've got the same dreams or similar dreams. We have different backgrounds, we have different upbringings, that's all, but we've got the same desires. If we can really take that on board, then we can have much, much deeper communications. Doesn't matter where you're from, you have a desire for your family, for your life, for success, for whatever it is, but you don't know what it is, but you have that desire. And if we can connect to that, then we can find out ways that are best for that person to achieve that dream, or even to discover that dream.
You know, something that is coming to my awareness right now, it is hard sometimes for people to communicate their idea or their needs or wants to other people.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it is harder for them to understand that for themselves.
Yeah.
So that is a big issue, that how you're going to communicate to someone if you don't understand what do you want.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there we have to use, we don't have to necessarily, but I think it's very good to use stories. Sometimes, for instance, you can talk about somebody who's been successful when they thought they had no opportunity for success. And that person can then start unconsciously connecting the hidden messages in that story and start making sense of their own understanding because they've heard about someone else. And it can spark a brilliant idea. I mean, one of the masters at that was Milton Erickson, the famous hypnotherapist. And, it was John Grinder and Bandler and a few other people who studied what he did, and they distilled NLP from him. But he was a master storyteller. And he was able to talk to you face to face, but the person sitting in the audience was the person he was really talking to, and he was telling stories and helping them to change a problem that they had without even knowing they were being addressed. And he was a master storyteller, but the stories were used in a special way. And it was not just about talking, it was the pauses, it was the inflection, the emphasis on certain parts and words and things like that that really made effect. But I mean, he had a lifetime of working before he managed to distill it down to what he really was famous for at the later stage of his life. But it really is incredible, the power of stories, isn't it?
Yes. And we're not talking about the stories that you tell to yourself that are limiting you. We're talking about the way you can express, convey a message that you want to give to other people, right? Because many of us, we have stories in our heads
Yeah.
that are the limiting beliefs, full of limiting beliefs. I cannot do this because of this and this and this that I did 10 years ago and it didn't work out. And you tell that story continuously, and that's why you cannot do whatever you want or what you want to achieve or your dream life because of those stories too. But that is a different kind of story. Just wanted to clarify
Yeah.
to our viewers.
Yeah. I mean, I've got two young children, and the eldest now is getting close to 8. The youngest has just turned 6. And my eldest loves drawing. She just loves drawing. And a few years ago, she came home from school and she sat there at the breakfast bar whilst I'm getting supper. And her sister was sat next to her and she was drawing something. I don't know what she was drawing at the time. And then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose between the two of them because her sister had banged her and made her make a mistake. And I came over to look what's going on and quiet them down. And she was drawing a 3 or 4 tier layer cake, and she was coloring the inside in and with a green pen. And then there's a big stroke going outside the cake. And I just looked at it and said, oh, that's interesting. I said, I wonder if you can make that in, how you can, not if you can, because that's another story, but how you can make it into a strawberry. It's ruined and everything else. So I calmed her down again and got a piece of paper and just drew a very, very crude strawberry in pencil and just walked off and left her. 5 minutes later, Daddy, 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 look at this. So I came over and there's this cake with 2 strawberries, one either side, and the green line was made into the leaf at the top, got the red strawberry with all the little dots on, and it just looked like it had been planned all along. The thing is, she had been moved out of the world of I can't into the world of possibility. Not because I was forcing her, but I just made a suggestion to her. And the strawberry was the first thing that came to my mind. So that's what I used as an analogy. But I wasn't trying to tell her what to do. And what I've found with her, and it's such a true analogy, is she's got a personal light switch with her. I can't switches the lights off. And she's in the dark. And I've told her this. If you switch that light switch on into I can, then you can see. And it's so true. How many people are walking around with that light switch switched off? I can't, I can't. And they miss the other thing that they miss is it's beautiful that you made that mistake, that it didn't work out before, because now you can go back and see what you learned from it. And that's another thing that people don't connect to. And maybe, you know, whatever you tried to do wasn't the right time for it because you had something to grow into before you could actually do it.
I see it with many of my clients at the same time. That is, a relationship did not work out. And they're
Mm-hmm.
in their pain, in the drama, and they're, and deep inside of themselves. And when you tell them, it's like, it was good that it didn't work out because it was not going to be for you. The best thing happened to you because now you learn
Yeah.
from that relationship that did not work. So the next relationship, you're going to make it better. It's a point of perspective. Something that I have learned is the people that have more challenges in life are the people that do not cannot adapt to the new situations.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that it should be something that be taught in schools, but they don't.
Well, possibility is limited in school. There's, you know, that's unfortunately the truth. I mean, if you think of a very young child, they don't have possibility in their world. There's something that they want to do, they find a way of doing it. You put, you know, should we say sweets or whatever it is that they are looking for away, hidden away, they find them. They're very creative. But when they get to a certain age, society and school takes that creativity and stifles it. And you know, what I find so paradoxical is that when we get into a lot of company situations, we're told by the boss, by HR, by whoever, you need to learn to think out of the box. But that was taken away from me. I was told I can't do that when I was a child. Why? Just imagine how beautiful it would be if we were able to encourage, and we are able to, if we chose to, so we say, encourage that creative thinking and then help them to use it and to get past problems. I mean, there's a person I know over here who has a young child at school, and they were being taught something in maths. And this child saw a different way of doing the problem. He was working in a totally different direction. He got the answer right, no problem. And he was castigated for it. No, that's not the way you do it. You have to do it this way. Now, what a limitation is being put on that child by the teacher because the teacher doesn't know anything different. Just like when I had that kindergarten class, it's too difficult. They can't do that. No, they can't do it if you force it on them in the way that you are thinking. But if you work with them in the way which is natural to them, they can do so many creative things, so many wonderful things. And why don't we work with children that way and bring them up into adult life using that power that they have? Because it is the way limitations are put into people, isn't it?
Yes.
You can't do that because, and you know, it's so sad.
Instead of looking for the solution, because every single problem has a
Yeah,
solution.
yeah. I mean, I've got a good friend in New York, and when she was at school, she still loves it, but she's doing other things well. But she's a phenomenal artist with pencils and shading and things like that. And one day, I think she was about 15 or so, she was in a lesson, and this teacher was stood there watching her for about 5 minutes as she was doing some drawing. And he said to her, he said, by rights, you shouldn't be able to paint that way, to draw that way, but you can. And that's wonderful. He was learning from her. He was open. He wasn't saying, no, you can't do that. You have to do it this way. He was discovering what she was seeing and how she was doing it. And then from there, he was able to guide her to get greater skill. Now, it's a shame we don't have every teacher in that respect. And, I've been told that I shouldn't say these things, but I think there's a lot of people in the teaching profession who shouldn't be teachers.
Yes, yes, definitely. Because it became, before it was something the teachers were going to become a teacher because they have that vocation. But now it is a job.
Yeah.
So they just go in, they finish college, to kind of find a job. It's like, okay, I'm going to become a teacher. But that's not
Yeah.
what I went to college for.
No.
So their heart is not there. It's just in the paycheck.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the system doesn't want too many creative teachers, does it? It wants to produce end products that fit into this place in society. And that's a big shame, because we are limiting people
Yes.
through schooling, through parenting, through societal conditioning. We're limiting people. And people don't know what is possible for them. And they grow up, as you say, I don't know what I want to do. I've been told I need to be a banker or this. I can't be a dancer. I can't make a living at this. I can't do that. What are they hearing? I can't, light switch off. I can't, light switched off. I can't, the light switched off.
Or you're not going to achieve your dreams. So forget
Yeah,
about and follow the society norms.
yeah. And then when you get to the end of your life, you sit and look back, and you just as that the paper by Bronnie Ware said, most people regret not choosing to live their own life, to always live somebody else's life, not choosing to be happy, not even recognizing they have that choice.
Yes. I remember my mother, she had a list of all
Mm-hmm.
the things that she wanted to do for the next life. And I was talking about, you don't start a list, that list. Some in this life. No, 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 I'm going to do it in the next life. So when she died with that list. But
Mm-hmm.
she did not achieve in this life because she don't even try.
Yeah,
And I bet many people are like her.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you want to get started with something, and you tell your friend, they say, well, why don't you wait till Monday? Just finish this week first and start on Monday. Tomorrow is another day. Why not start now? Oh, well, I want to do this or that or something else. Or it's silly. We always have a good reason for putting off,
Yes,
but we never think about finding a good reason to start this moment.
yes, I agree. Well, I have loved this conversation so much. And I'm so happy that you're working with people, that you're coaching one on one and Zoom, right? So, like that, anyone can book an appointment with you, right, Stuart?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing is to go to my website, and I'm offering at the moment a free one-on-one conversation um, without any strings attached to help people discover what it is that they actually want. Because, as you said earlier, it's so sad that a vast majority of people are walking around not knowing what it is they want. They're just existing. And then they get trapped.
Yes,
And it's so sad. And when someone sees that possibility, the whole world changes. You can feel like it's like the sunlight coming out, just like here, the sun coming behind the clouds and painting this picture of beauty. It's there in everybody. Just got to find that way. And that's why we have special people like yourself who can help them connect to that. And you can use the advantage. English isn't my first language. You need to help me here. Tell me what you really mean by that. That's just such a beautiful way of being able to help someone go inside and discover for themselves what they're trying to say. That's just beautiful. I love that.
that's so true. Information of Stuart is going to be down below this episode. So like that you can contact him and hey, discover the possibilities that you can achieve. So thank you so much, Stuart. Do you have something else that you would like to add before we close?
Well, I would just like to close with the light switch. Make sure you switch it on so you can see. When you get home and it's dark and you switch on the light, it's wonderful what you can see. So why not use it in your life? I can.
I love that. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
And if this episode helped you, please share it. You might find another friend or someone that was just waiting for this opportunity to hear this and see the possibilities that they can achieve in their life. So share it, please. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe and leave us a comment. Thank you for being in Soul Talk. My name is Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love. Thank you so much.
Thank you.